Hello, everyone. We're just waiting for folks to join. Wonderful. Looks like we got some folks that have joined us. 13. Hopefully we'll get. I don't like having 13. Make sure you send the invite to a friend because we got to break that.
Give it to like
All
02
right.
maybe.
14. Yeah, we'll just give it another minute or two and then we'll get started here. Thank you, everyone, for joining. All right. Wonderful. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Scott Jacobson. I am the VP of Strategy and Growth at Forest, which is a full-service marketing and growth agency. And I'm joined here by Zach Clark. He is the Director of Growth Marketing at Forest. Zach, welcome.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining.
And we are excited about today. We have a webinar, really interesting and well sought after topic, which is what do you do with all these leads, or what don't you do with all these leads, and how do you turn it into revenue, and how do you turn it into growth? It's something that we are passionate about, and Zach in particular is going to be sharing how demand generation has really been the answer for us and our clients, and we look forward to sharing that with you. You all might be expecting my colleague, my co-founder, Brandon Triola, as the other person on this webinar. Unfortunately, he is sick today. His whole family is sick, so we are hoping that he recovers speedily, and you'll just have to settle with me, and I'm sorry about that. We are going to have Q&A at the end, but we do encourage you to have a dialogue during this, and we look forward to answering any questions. And make sure you do stay till the end because we do have an exclusive offer also to those joining to have a really exciting opportunity specifically for their business. We do focus, just so everyone knows a bit about us, we've been in this game for a bit now, and we focus on B2B tech and software, and we specialize with IT consultants. So if you're in that space, then we're thrilled to have you here. So without further ado, Zach, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Scott. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my screen here, and we'll get into it. All right. So yeah, today we're going to be talking about generating revenue, not just empty leads. So the first thing that I think is really important that I want everyone to kind of get in the right headspace for this is we're really going to challenge your thinking about B2B marketing. And so there's not going to be a lot of talks today about MQLs, SQLs, how to generate massive amounts of leads. We're also not going to be talking about incremental changes to outdated tactics, but instead it's going to be a lot of marketing fundamentals that I think that B2B marketers have essentially lost in their quest for generating a ton of leads and trying to get those leads to convert right away. So 3 big challenges that all of this is really going to touch on today is that B2B marketers face is differentiating content among competitors. This is a huge challenge, especially with AI, ChatGPT, commodity content, you could call it, is just exploding right now. And so that's a huge challenge that B2B marketers are facing, is figuring out how to, especially if you're consulting, really software too, but in consulting, content is a huge way to build trust, and it's really hard to differentiate. Number 2 is getting genuine buyer engagement. So, it's harder to, like when you're sending emails, promoting eBooks, posting on social, engagement rates are going down, and it's getting harder and harder to get real engagement from buyers online. And then the last one, the biggest one we're going to talk about that all of this bleeds into, is actually just turning leads into revenue. So the first thing I think is really important for everyone to understand, and what's really like kind of the foundation of how we built all of this, is what's called the 95-5 rule. You may have heard of this, but it essentially says that 95, kind of a roundabout number, 95% of your potential buyers are not currently in market for a solution. And 5% are in market for a solution. And so this is a foundational thing. It's why 4-week, 8-week ebook campaigns that are, you promote an ebook, you do content syndication, you put it on a bunch of channels, it's on your website, they download the ebook, you send them 3 to 5 nurturing emails that are, sending them a couple other things, ask them to get on a demo. That's why those things typically fall flat. You can't force someone into a sales cycle. And typically, not to mention, a lot of the buying decisions these days, the number of people that are involved in a buying decision is going up. And so just focusing on like one person that downloaded an ebook from a company and then trying to get them on a demo is a really hard thing to do. And so there's a need for a differentiated approach here. So a little bit more about those out of market buyers. They're really just learners. I wouldn't even really call them buyers. It's just people, it's professionals. A lot of people on this call probably are out of market for something. You guys, if you're marketers, you've purchased HubSpot in the past, you're not looking to purchase HubSpot right now. And if Pipedrive or another CRM is trying to get you on a call, it's just not going to work. But most professionals are learning all the time. And so there needs to be more of a focus on these out of market buyers. And we're going to talk about that today. And then in market buyers, this is the 5%. These are the people that are actively looking for a solution. And so when you're doing massive lead gen, content syndication, you're trying to generate more leads, your MQL goal is going up. What you're basically doing is trying to find needle in a haystack, which is the 5% of people that are in market. So that's a really hard thing to do. Not to mention, every other company is fighting for that 5%. So they go into market, everyone's doing their typical activities of sending them a bunch of emails, cold emails, trying to get them on a demo call. And it's not working, or it's harder to compete because you're competing with everyone else at the same time. And then a few other stats I thought would be interesting to talk about today is it takes 40 plus touch points to close a deal. And so it's really important to note of like how much work it takes to really get someone to know, like, and trust you, and eventually sign on as a client or buy your solution. And then another shocking thing is that only 5% of the buying journey is spent with your sales team. And so it's a Gartner stat. I think it's 17% of the buying journey is spent talking to sellers in general. And of that, only 5% is spent with your sales team. And so you really don't get a lot of time to do selling until they're like right at the finish line. And then the last thing that really also informs all of this is that SMEs and product experts have the greatest influence on buyers. That's your subject matter experts, according to a Forrester study. And so the way that Forrest has kind of looked at all these things and packaged all this up and figured out a way to solve this problem is through something that we call Outgrow. Outgrow is a service that we offer. It's kind of modular, touches all points of the your marketing program, but it's also a methodology. And so today, given that Outgrow is kind of a service, we're just literally going to give away the whole playbook. We're going to explain how we do the ins and outs of everything, how the approach works, where we put our focus, and ultimately like how we've helped a lot of B2B tech companies win. So Outgrow focuses on both types of buyers. It focuses on in-market buyers, getting in front of them at the right time, aligning with sales to close deals. It also focuses on out-of-market buyers. So becoming an industry-leading voice, aka the best free consultant, to help buyers solve problems and inspire them with new ideas for growth and transformation. So this is a snapshot. It's kind of it's an example, but it's also specific. So this is how Outgrow. This is a snapshot of essentially the future state of what marketing looks like after Outgrow. And so this is in the left side, you see out of market buyers, and on the right side, you see in market buyers. So for out of market buyers, we call this thing the value engine. It's this loop of valuable content that you put buyers into. And this is this is basically a lens and an approach to building trust with buyers that are out of market. And so the whole point of the value engine is you take your ideal client profile, you get them to opt in one of these things, one of these parts of the bucket. I'm going to unpack this a lot in a second. And then they're consistently in this loop of getting valuable content delivered to them on multi-channel. And then an in-market, things like timely outreach. So helping your sales team understand what accounts are engaged, when they should reach out, knowing what triggers accounts to go into a buying cycle so that your sales team can jump on it and be right there when it's time. Low friction buying. We're going to talk about instant meeting booking, value forward offers and what that looks like. If it's a software as a service company, it's obviously like free trials. It's a little bit harder when you're a consultant or if you offer IT services to do a value forward offer, but we'll talk about some ways you can do that. And then high intent activities and leveraging intent data. And then if you're a ServiceNow partner, NetSuite partner, any of these big like BMC, Microsoft, if you're a partner to another technology, there's probably multiple. You obviously need to influence the reps because the reps are going to be the ones that can really feed you those in-market accounts. So we're going to talk about that today as well.
All right. Zach, I got to tell you, there's a lot here. It could be a little bit intimidating if someone just sees all of this content. You're also going to tell us a way that this doesn't feel impossible, right?
Yeah, we found a way to make it easy.
We found a way.
All right, so the whole purpose of the value engine is to build buyer trust at scale through compelling thought leadership. And so, like I said, you really want to kind of create these four main quadrants. So this is typically the main quadrants that we see with our clients: paid media, organic media, email marketing, and your website, and then ecosystem distribution. There's obviously events in this, but that's kind of a separate thing and kind of will tie into all of this. So, don't think about that right now, but these are still the big ones. So under paid media, you've got video snippets promoting, your best content, whether it's like, taking a webinar, dividing into snippets, putting that in front of your target buyers, ensuring that your target buyers are seeing the content that you want. SME promoted posts. So like, you might have a subject matter expert building their own brand. You can promote those through LinkedIn now to, again, build trust, build credibility, and then just general brand awareness be to focus too much on benefits, not just tell people clearly exactly what you do. And then going to organic media, blogs, again, like I said, SME posts, we're going to talk about that a lot. Company posts, so your company socials, moving into email marketing, newsletters to out-of-market accounts, prospects, resource hubs, so creating like branded things on your website that are places that people can get access to, that are huge libraries of content that help them better do their jobs. And then the last one on this one is existing client newsletters. So just for cross-selling, upselling, sharing wins, sharing new products with existing clients is also part of this value engine. If you have a product, sharing tips on how to use your product goes into the value engine. Ecosystem distribution. So if you have partners, sharing testimonials and success stories with reps of like ServiceNow reps, NetSuite reps, etc. Bi-weekly or monthly newsletters for your reps, so sharing your new products, wins. If your sales team's selling, let's say they're selling ServiceNow and they're finding really great ways to engage buyers, sharing that with reps who are also selling ServiceNow is another value-led thing. And then same thing, resource hub for reps. So not just having a resource hub just for your potential clients, but also creating resource hubs for your reps. So to kind of illustrate how this all should play out is this is a B2B buying journey. Again, we always think about this as in market and out of market. And so on the left, you see in market. Let's say someone hired a consultant, they solved a big problem, they bought a new solution, now they've gone out of market. So once they're out of market, the goal of the value engine is to do four big things. One, create content that educates them on issues that they realize over time. So you might see a really big problem that a company is facing, but it's going to take time to get them to understand what that issue is and the impact of that. So you want to do that over the long haul. You want to become top of mind. You want to build a high level of trust, and you want to agitate an issue so they see that issue as a number one priority. So while they're out of market, if you do this well, they're going to see issues that your product or service solves over time is going to become a huge agitated problem in their minds. So whenever they go to a board meeting or an annual planning session, they're going to push that forward as being a priority. And then once they go into market, again, your company will be the first person that they reach out to. And so the whole point of the value engine is to become the best free consultant that that your prospects know. And that way, whenever they go into a buying cycle, you're the first person they come to. They go to your website, they fill out the form, and you've got essentially hot leads right there. And so within this out-of-market cycle, they're typically long. Someone could start consuming your content right after they purchase the solution, in the middle of the buying off cycle, or right at the end. So, like Scott said, that's a lot of content. It's a lot of just pieces and parts and places to be. And so you need a way to fuel your value engine. And so the way that we fuel the value engine is through what we call like pillar long form content. So think about like webinars, podcasts, things that are 30 minutes or longer. And then, so for Forrest, we have the Humanity Sells podcast. It's the main driver of our content. Webinars like this will be a main driver of our content that we're going to put into snippets and distribute. We're going to take the transcript and write into blog posts, put it into emails. There's a lot of opportunity in creating pillar long form content to fuel the value engine. The three big things that the pillar content has to have to be successful: it has to be insightful and educational. So you have to talk about non-obvious things. We can't talk about things that ChatGPT could spit out, that other people are spitting out. It has to be deep insights, showing that you know how to solve problems. You're doing it day in and day out. We're talking like deep, insightful things that people will want to bookmark. You can also use client-based triggers for this too, to know if something is insightful or not. So if a client is consistently asking questions about one thing, you can learn this from sales, you can learn this from support teams, then you can start to build content around that. It's also got to be entertaining. So you're going to start to see a lot of companies shift from this like ebook production into trying to become a media company. And so it's going to be the job of marketers and content marketers to basically create fun, entertaining content that your audience actually wants to consume. It doesn't have to be ebooks anymore. And so an example of this is like, if your audience loves Seinfeld, then create something that like feels like Seinfeld episodes, that's insightful and informative about whatever problem your product or service solves. And the last one is agile and journalistic. And so content calendars are great. If you're creating pillar content, you're trying to plan things out, but you need to not do it on like a 3 or 6 month basis, because it needs to be, you need to be creating the content based off conversations that are happening right now. And so some industries are different than others. Some are, changing all the time. Like if you work in marketing, people are talking about there's a hot topic every other week. So you really want to align your pillar content cadence to be around kind of how the big topics and conversations shift in your industry. And then you want to teach your journalists or your content writers to act like journalists, following the influencers in the space, figuring out what they're talking about, going out and finding a story in order to write on, in order to create content around. So once you have your pillar content, like I said, at Forrest, we do podcast and essentially audio, video podcast episodes. Then you can start to create a lot of other content from that. So you can see it can turn into newsletters, can turn into, if you were doing audio, video, you can take the audio, put it onto a podcast platform. You can take that podcast and distill it into 4 or 5 really great like subject matter expert or people in your company that want to have personal brands into their own posts. And then you can also distill that into paid ads. So the paid ad function becomes less about conversion and more about teaching people and showing people that how to solve problems. And you notice company posts on like LinkedIn, for example, is really important. But the reason we have SME posts here as being the one we put forward is because LinkedIn prioritizes people over companies. So a personal post gets 5 times the amount of reach as a company post. So prioritizing your SMEs in this value engine is really important, because one, especially on LinkedIn, if they're building personal brands, it's going to prioritize their content. They're going to get a lot more reach than you would on a company page. And people want to do business with other people. And it's that business to human interaction that you're going to start to build trust. And if you have multiple people from your team posting, then they all kind of act as a unified front on behalf of your brand and start to build a lot of trust. Scott, do you have anything to add yet on here?
No, just that point of really ensuring that it's valuable, right? Like the SME posts, you have something to say. You have something to offer the conversation, and sometimes that does take some intentionality. It really does take some thought. So I just think that's so important.
Yeah, and I'll add one more thing too. With this, the check of the box of getting this done is one thing, but the actual execution of it is honestly probably more important than just getting it done. So for example, like Scott said, if you're creating SME posts, you kind of have to learn to play the game of the LinkedIn algorithm, how LinkedIn works. If you're like, let's say you want to take your webinar and put it on TikTok, you can't just take the horizontal video and slap it on TikTok in like 5-minute increments. You need to cut it, you need to verticalize it, you need to cut out the snippets, you need to cut out the pauses, because of how people consume content on TikTok is different. So I have to say the execution really matters in this, and making sure that the content feels native to the platform is huge in this success.
Yeah, and just before we move, just this is a great example of a piece of pillar content getting sliced and diced and repurposed into, multiple pieces of content. So, it's not as overwhelming as you might think. Because you have that pillar content, you can go back to it and you can find, oh, this is actually quite manageable, and a small team even can really make a big impact.
Yeah. And I think it's a muscle that once you flex it a few times, the team will get really, really good at pumping these things out. We've seen that at Forest with our writing team, and just in general of like taking pillar content and distributing it. Can be really you can really get good at it. So with this pillar content, like I said, the execution really matters, and making it stand out is a huge issue. And so I want to talk about the secret sauce to making your content not feel like a commodity and feel like it's a unique position in the market. And it's through something that we call the strategic narrative content map. So this is basically a way to distill content from your brand positioning into a strategic narrative, into point of views, and then taking those point of views and creating topics around them. We have awareness level topics for people that are out of market, and then decision level topics for people that are in market. Most of your content will probably be around awareness level. Maybe 20% will be around like the decision level topics, and I'll explain a little bit more of that in just a sec.
Yeah, and it's so important to have that strategic narrative really tied to the business's goals, right? Like, what is the winning aspiration of your business? This isn't just you coming up with a compelling narrative, but rather it's really tied to your unique positioning.
Yeah, so one of the prerequisites of a great strategic narrative is having strong brand positioning. I will say that. And so that's an important piece to have in all this. It's got to tie up into the broader, like Scott said, the broader business, the broader brand position. But in general, the strategic narrative is essentially the strategic direction that connects your content to your brand position. And so a strategic narrative has a few attributes. Number one, it challenges beliefs in your industry. So it takes something that people typically believe in a compelling way, challenges that belief, and basically gets people rallied behind a new belief. Number two is it gives a unique view on what the future looks like. So you've got to paint a picture of how your company wants your industry to move. And then the last one is that it has to showcase how you believe your customers should transform. So not all strategic narratives are going to hit on all of these. It might just be two of these. I would say two would be the minimum that you want to hit on. But an example of this is that for a strategic narrative is that we believe human-centered marketing drives more business growth. So our brand positioning and kind of our big thing is that we say humanity sells. And so that's really important because we want to tie that into a narrative that then goes into our content. So once you have your strategic narrative, you need to develop what we call supporting point of views. And so this is like a little bit more of a tactical level point of view. These are things that like will lead them up into your strategic narrative, but it can be applied a little bit more tactically and a little bit more practically to your content. So if Forest's strategic narrative is human-centered marketing drives more business growth, our supporting point of view, one of them, is that marketing should be aligned to how people actually buy, not how you want them to buy. And so an example of creating content about that is essentially this webinar, where we're saying, okay, a lot of marketing is around like trying to push people through these funnels that don't really exist. Instead, you need to build your marketing that's human-centered, buyer-centric around how people actually buy. And so that's an example of a point of view that stems from your strategic narrative. And then once you have that point of view, you can create a bunch of topics around that. So if the point of view is that marketing should be aligned to how people buy, not how you want them to buy, then we could be creating awareness level topics about the truth of why leads aren't converting and talk about the 95-5 rule as an example. And so these awareness topics are really around that learning, around that building awareness about their problems, agitating those problems, and again, tying it into the supporting point of view. And then the decision level topics are really about how to help people buy. So decision level topics are all about buyer empowerment, while awareness level topics are all about buyer admiration, like building brand admiration, people to really love your brand. So when you think about decision level topics, if I were writing one for Forrest, I would be talking about, how to hire a partner to transform your marketing. Here are the things you need to look for. Here's how your team needs to be prepared to hire a marketing agency. Those are like the decision level topics. So when your sellers and your marketers are marketing and selling to people who are in market, you can give them content that empowers them on that journey. So this can be expanded out. And if you really build it out, this is what it looks like in the end. So you've got your strategic narrative that sits at the top, and then you can create as many point of views as you want. You can create your point of views around offerings. You can create your point of views by persona. And then from there, you can start to identify like, what are your topics that align to those point of views, both awareness and decision level. And now, once you've built this out, again, you can build this out and you could have 10 point of views, 10 topics, whatever it is. Now you have this huge place of all of your content with topics that are aligned to a strategic narrative that isn't just commodity content in the market. So ultimately, the goal here is that you're telling the same story a bunch of different ways. And when you can get someone bought into your strategic narrative, you're basically positioning yourself as the only person that can solve that problem. So for Forrest, if we really are getting people to buy into human-centered marketing, and the whole industry, if only the whole industry was bought into human-centered marketing, we would be the only people that can solve that problem, and our inbound requests, our demand is going to go way up.
Good.
So also, while talking about all these channels, I wanted to just throw out some quick wins, some quick like 1 millimeter tweaks you could make today on your content. If these are some of the big channels that a lot of our clients use, I just wanted to point out some of the tactical things that are buyer centric that can really make an impact to your content and increase your engagement. So for email, one of the things is take a 0-click approach. So when we've done this in the past, we have always thought about putting 90% of the value in the email. So if you're promoting a blog, just put almost the entire blog in the email. Make it so that people don't have to leave their email browser. They don't have to click away to experience the value of that email. And what's going to happen is your click-through rates might go down, but your open rates over time are going to go up because people will know that that when they open your email, one, it's going to be valuable, and two, you're not asking them to leave their email. A lot of people are just going through their emails or checking their emails. They don't need to be pushed off. They don't want to be pushed off somewhere else. And so you're going to be able to build a lot of value in that email, and you're not going to rely on getting people to click through in order for them to get the trust transfer of whatever the blog post is. And then just don't ask for anything most of the time. And so we always am like, build these emails and not ask people to book a demo, give them an off ramp maybe at the bottom, but don't make that the forefront that you're asking them to do anything. And by off ramp at the bottom, I mean a block that says, this is what we do. You can schedule a time here, but don't make that the forefront of what you're asking for all the time. And then another easy thing is just add the time to read and the key takeaways at the top. So if you open an email, this email is going to take you 1 minute to read. And these are the big things we're talking about, which will increase your conversion from people that are seeing the above the fold of the email to actually reading the email because they know what they're going to get. With social ads, just allocate more of your budget to ads that demonstrate knowledge and trust and transfer trust. So again, promoting webinar snippets, things that are valuable, things that can really build trust. Also take a 0-click approach. So if your click-through rate on ads is 1%, what about the 99% that don't click? You need to give those people value. So if you're promoting a report that has a bunch of data in it, do a carousel ad that has 4 or 5 of the data points in the feed. So if someone's scrolling through, you're going to still get people to see the data. You're going to still get that trust transfer, and you're not going to rely on all these people to click through. And also, this is a big one, make creative your competitive advantage. At Forrest, a lot of us come from B2C in the past, come from doing freelance work for Chick-fil-A, Southwest Airlines, like things where the creativity was really high. And I think in B2B, it feels like you can't do that. I would say that if you're nervous to launch a campaign because it just feels like a moonshot a little bit. It feels like a little bit too creative. It's probably a good thing, and it's probably going to be a pattern and rep it stand out. And then for SME posts, there's this tool called Aware. You can build customized feeds for your SMEs. So if you're targeting certain ICP, you can put that into Aware. Your SME or anyone at your company can log in, and they're only going to see those posts, and they can just go and comment and engage with those people without having to like scroll through their thing, their LinkedIn feed. Ask your SMEs to spend time each day commenting. Coach your SMEs on how to write and post 4 or 5 times, 3 or 4, 5 times a week. Blogs, we always split our blogs into out-of-market accounts focused on building admiration, and then also targeting in-market accounts to build empowerment. Make the blogs feel like guides. Don't just make them like, 3 things, 3 ways you should tackle X problem, and then have 3 bullet points. Put charts in them. Make them feel like an ebook. Just essentially, would they pay to read it? You got to make it really valuable. Virtual events are a really cool channel to leverage for lunch and learns, micro workshops to build relationships at target accounts. So if there's accounts that are engaging with your content, you can ask them to jump on a lunch and learn for free, buy lunch for their whole team, interview experts on joint webinars to leverage their audiences. So if you're working in healthcare and your target buyer is usually in like healthcare HR, you should go reach out to some HR leaders that have a healthcare audience. That's a really big thing that can be really impactful. And then in-person events, if you're building pillar content like webinars and podcasts, it's a great time to make those connections and ask people that are in the same city to collaborate on content, ask them to be a guest in person, can make it really fun. And just make those events about teaching, not about selling.
This is good. But I gotta tell you, like, a person who comes from a marketing background, my entire life, I did marketing in-house, like a lot of the people on the call. A lot of this stuff is like counterintuitive, right? You need to have a button on your emails, right? Like, so Zach, this is proven, this is tested, this is the long game. We know it works, right?
We do. And I did tell you to challenge your thinking.
He did. And just think about your own experience, right? Like, what are you consuming? Ask yourself that question. Is it just that stale email that you've gotten literally for the same 10 years that it just feels like, okay, some marketing person had to send out an email? Or is it something that you actually want to consume? Ask yourself, what is the last blog that you read? What is the last email that you read? And I bet you'll find this kind of thinking is embedded in that.
Yeah, great ad. All right, well, now let's move on to capturing in-market accounts. So how do you capture demand? There's a lot of different facets to this. Obviously, sales team is going to be carrying a lot of weight in this in their prospecting, but there's ways that marketing and sales can act together. There's ways that you can capture more demand on your website. And there's ways that you can influence partner reps to capture more, partner tech reps to capture more of that demand as well. So some of the big things, timely outreach. We coach and have built reports for sales teams to understand what accounts, like what top accounts are engaging with content, and then sharing that with sales. Like I mentioned in the beginning, account triggers on closed won data. So what are the things that you've learned about your clients that trigger them to go into a buying cycle, and then building outreach sequences around that and building audiences for marketing around that. And then low friction buying, instant meeting booking is a huge thing. I can't tell you how many times we've seen clients and our own experience of, all right, we're a hot lead. I literally want a demo. I literally want to talk to you about buying something. I submit a contact form and I'm at a thank you page. And then I have to wait 2 to 3 days for a booking. It's not the way to do it. Value forward offers, talk about how we can do that in consulting. High intent activities and intent data, how to leverage retargeting ads for this, Google keyword ads, doing product specific webinars, and then in-market content like blogs. And then we'll talk about partner tech and reps and how we can influence them. So I'll start with that, influencing technology, partner reps. First thing is resource hubs. Like I mentioned in the beginning, creating a place to send their accounts to, see the knowledge that you have. If you can create a place that, okay, this rep has someone that just bought a license for ServiceNow or NetSuite, give them a place that they can go to send someone to learn about how to do implementation. You're going to build trust with the rep. You're going to build trust with the new person who just bought the license. Monthly newsletters, make them fun. Don't make them boring. announce new products, services, announce the wins, talk about, again, some of the ways that you guys have been selling the products, selling the solutions, the platforms, and just be really transparent with them and just try and treat them like they're a partner in this. And then the last one is just create compelling enablement, ROI ROI calculators, benchmark guides, self-serve demo portals. If you can do that, just give your reps great tools to sell your products. Like I mentioned in the beginning, we're living in a self-serve era, so most buyers want to be able to do these things without having to talk to a sales team. And then for high intent activities and intent data, when you're thinking about retargeting ads, you should always build out your retargeting ad framework if you're doing paid ads in a way that you're basically giving people ways to like dive deeper into your content. So start with some light content at the top in like a cold way. You might just have like it might just be like an SME post that's like, 4 or 5 lines, really compelling, and really shows your thought, your knowledge and your thought leadership. Let that be the first thing that they click on. And then for the people who showed interest in that, give them something a little bit deeper. Like this is where the value loop can kind of like play into itself. So someone sees an SME post, they click on it, and the next thing you show them is like a webinar, because it's a lot more in-depth content. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're having more high intent because they watch the webinar, but you'll slowly start to push them into having buying intent by doing that. And then in market specific blogs and content, again, just writing right resources to help buyers understand how to buy. This is especially good for SEO. And you can capture a lot of in-market accounts through doing great SEO on your more buyer empowerment type of blogs. And then product specific webinars, just host them consistently. It's can be a great way to move along pipeline. If you're doing those, if you have someone that's like, an opportunity stage and you want to try and push them along, having product specific webinars can be huge. It can also be a great way if someone has a ton of account engagement to invite someone to, just to get an idea of what your product does or what your services are like. And then Google keyword ads. This one's tricky because you can waste a ton of money on this, but if you focus on branded keywords and high intent keywords only, and you're really scrutinizing your flow here and your conversion rates and your audiences and your clicks, you can make that work really, really well. Then I think the biggest thing is, if you have the value loop spun up, how do you turn that content consumption into deals? I think that this is like where the rubber meets the road. And this whole presentation, this is probably like the thing that gets the most response, because it's just a totally different way to look at content consumption and then passing that along to sales. So let's say that you have someone that's consuming your pillar content, they visited your website, they're interacting with your paid ads, they follow your SMEs, they're subscribed to your newsletter, like they're doing all the things, which is the goal of the value loop, because the value loop is going to push people from one place into the other. And so let's say that you have a highly engaged account. You need to set a threshold essentially based off historical data of like what's meaningful account engagement. Let's say that they reach that. What do you do? The first thing that you do, because you don't know if they're going to be if they're in market or not, they might just be consuming your content, but it's someone that based off the data that knows, likes, and trusts you because they're consuming your content. So there's 3 big things you can do. Let's say that it's a top account. That it's like, it's an enterprise account. You really want it. They would be like your ideal client. You can invite them to be guests on your pillar content. So it's a great way to, like, if you're running webinars, you're running podcasts consistently, invite them to be on the pillar content. You're leading with value. You're not asking for anything. You can make a genuine relationship out of that with your target buyer. The other thing you can do is have your sales team send outreach emails, inviting them to wedge offerings. What do I mean by wedge offerings? I mean things like free assessments, doing like, an auditing tool that they can do on their own, that you can or you can coach them through, but just like something that kind of is like small, whether it's ideally free, maybe something that's like super palatable in terms of price to get them in, just something that you can invite them to that isn't like a full-blown engagement, but you can still build trust and build a relationship. And then the last one, maybe this is like the lowest tier of engagement, is just having an SDR reach out or a salesperson reach out and just provide them additional resources. So if they were engaging in a specific webinar, send them additional resources and just try to build those relationships. That's really the name of the game here, is just all about that one-to-one human-centered relationship building. I would even look at these three things as your tiers. So like the first thing I would do if you take your target account list and segment it, I would look at your top target accounts to be the people that you invite to pillar content. The middle one of like your tier two, send them outreaches to be on to do a wedge offering together. And then the last one is like, maybe it's a tier three or really low engagement, but you still want to kind of build a relationship. That's where I would just do kind of a softer providing additional resources.
Yeah, and your salespeople are going to love this approach, right? Because they're constantly looking for something to send their potential. Um, yeah, and now they have it, and it's actually interesting. So they're just going to say, okay, I don't have to send that boring thing. I can send a piece of this pillar content that I just saw, and that's going to spark the conversation, or that's going to keep the conversation going.
Yeah, I would say too that it's a what's one last note on this. It's a this approach and this outreach approach that's timely is a pattern interrupt for what they're normally experiencing. So a lot of times they attend a webinar and they do something, maybe they're engaging a lot of account of it, they're engaging with a lot of content, but every other company is going to be saying, oh, get on a demo. I saw you're interested in this. You want to get on a demo. You want to get on a call. But if you reach out in a value-led way, that's such a huge differentiator. I would even say for webinars, the after a webinar, you have prime real estate to reach out to someone. The thank you emails is just such a it's a nice thing to do, but you're wasting a prime opportunity to like continue to build a relationship with someone by giving them a little bit more information, a little bit more content. So kind of the last big piece of capturing demands. I think with all of this, one of the hard things is attribution. And so there's a lot of different ways to attribute this, if you're not doing direct ebook downloads and things you can measure in HubSpot, it gets harder to attribute some of these things to marketing. And so one of the easiest ways is the most basic thing, but so many companies miss it, is an open-ended, how did you hear about us field on your contact form on your website. Keep it open-ended so it's not a drop down. If someone, they heard about you through a specific SME post or a specific podcast episode, let them talk about that. And then at the end of the year, you can export that field and like get a view of like what activities are driving most of your revenue. I would also train your sales team to ask this question constantly. I mean, this is like such a big question that I think marketers have lost sight of in the last few years. And then the last thing I mentioned is just, once they submit that form, like send them right to a booking page. Ideally be like a Calendly, or if you're a little bit more mature and have the budget, something like Chili Piper would be great. That Chili Piper will basically give them instant scheduling and also route them to the SDR that's best to suit and sell and help them. I want to throw in the tech stack here. These things can obviously be interchanged. This is kind of the big snapshot of how Forest utilizes tech to enable this. HubSpot and Salesforce are obviously the big two. Attribution account tracking, there's a company that's newer called Hockey Stack that has just been crushing it lately in attribution. They've figured out how to attribute all sorts of any engagement. They've coined attribution 2.0, which is basically like not looking at like any of the legacy ways to do it, like first touch and last touch attribution, but looking at marketing as a whole of attributing revenue. They've got tracking in place. It's a really cool thing to look into. So we've kind of figured out how to make that work. And then Dream Data as well is another one that Dream Data will reveal the companies that are on your site. So with this, you can still be promoting downloadable content. I think the approach is a little bit different, but sometimes if you're doing things like ungated webinars, ungated blog posts, you want to know what companies are engaging and you want to be able to share that with sales. Dream Data is a great way to do that. I mentioned Chili Piper. I mentioned Aware for SME, LinkedIn ad account engagement. I think another one on here that might be a newer one that's really impactful is Winter. And so when you're thinking about demand capture and demand generation, really, Winter does a great job of message testing. And so you can basically like choose your exact audience and you can do a bunch of message testing through the platform. It's all hand validated. So all the people that are responding to the surveys are validated by their LinkedIn profiles by Winter.
That one's so good. We just did that on our website, and you can literally say, we're looking for VPs of this industry to comment on whatever. And it will totally, it's so great to get outside the building and to hear real people respond to the message.
Yeah, it's an awesome tool. When it comes to measuring success for this type of program, and when you're getting a little bit away from measuring by MQLs, I do want to make a note that when the reason that we haven't talked a lot about MQLs and leads is an important metric, but when marketing teams are fully focused on lead generation and MQLs, they get kneecapped in their ability to do anything else. So a marketing team that's measured on leads is not going to do a podcast that could build a ton of trust, but instead they're going to do content syndication to hit the vanity metric of leads. And so we don't measure by leads. I think it's an important thing to look at. And obviously you need to be providing leads, but it's not the main thing. So the main thing that this program measures is just revenue directly attributed to marketing, and then qualified ops generated by marketing. So how many opportunities are coming in that are actually qualified? Those are the lagging indicators. Those things usually show up in 3 to 6 months. And then some of the leading indicators of this that we look at immediately for KPIs is target account engagement. So like how many of the accounts that you're targeting are actually engaged in your content. Is your inbound demo request form, are you seeing any bit of increase? Is your organic website traffic going up, especially from people that are searching your company name? Because if you're doing the value leap in all these other channels and people are coming to Google to search your company, it's a huge indicator that you're doing great in content. Website conversion rates, another good one that we look at, because if you're building trust through your content, people are coming to your site and they're converting at a much higher rate because they come with an existing level of trust. And then cost per acquisition and cost per qualified opportunity are some other big ones. So, like I said, when we have implemented this with our clients, we've done this a number of times. These are some of the metrics that we've pulled that have been probably the biggest ones. A 40% decrease in cost per qualified lead, than industry average, and also through benchmarks with our clients. And then a 37% increase in leads turning into SQOs, so sales qualified opportunities. And then through this value-led approach, and through the strategic narrative, the average increase in buyer digital engagement we've seen with our clients is up 323%. And then there's some qualitative things that are a little bit harder to measure that I think are really, really important to taking this value-led approach, using the value engine, and building out growth. So number one, when you're building out this content, sellers have a great content to leverage. The sales team having an arsenal of content that they can pull that's categorized really well, so that they might be working a deal and they need to be able to show something. They need to be able to show some authority around a specific topic. Now they can go and pull that. Also, if your SMEs and your brand has built a really big, genuinely engaged audience, next time you go to do a new product launch, it's gonna be a lot easier. Easier in air quotes, because it's always still hard, but easier because you have an engaged audience that you can work from, and you're not trying to like go out and find a cold audience to start to sell to. Sales sees higher response rates in their cold outreach and in their prospecting. Also, you can attract great SMEs because your company is actually incentivizing personal brands. I think we're going to see a huge increase in personal brands and companies starting to build, especially with SDRs, honestly. And I'm thinking consulting, probably SMEs too, but I know that there's like SDR incentives coming out for people that are building their own personal brand and building content for the company. And then the last one is that this is, can be seen, like Scott said, some of these things we're talking about is a little bit counterintuitive, but it's a risk that you take. And I think marketers need to take risks. And when they do it and it's successful, you look like a genius. So you show up to work and people really respect you for taking a chance. And I'm going a little bit quick here because I want to make sure we save at least a little bit of time for Q&A at the end. And this is recorded, and we will send it out as well. All right. Last big thing here. How do you actually implement this? So this is obviously, for some of you, depending on where your company's at in marketing maturity, depending on where you're at with, how your company's set up, this can feel a little bit daunting. So the first thing that we do is run a center of excellence workshop. So you basically need to pull together a team that's going to be responsible for rolling this out in a way that is responsible. So the number one thing you want to do with that is just decide what areas of your current marketing program you need to implement the outgrowth methodology. So you're going to try and understand, like, where is the biggest revenue gap? Where is the thing that's like that has the most potential but just isn't working right? Like, where does it hurt the most? The next thing is just setting up benchmarks to compare against your current program. So if you're running, like, let's just say, for example, the extreme, a heavily lead generation optimized program, like, you got to figure out how to set those benchmarks of like what those metrics look like make sure you're clear on like how much money you're investing, what your ROI is, so then you can compare it as you start to roll out a new program. And then you want to create this 6-month roadmap. So like, here's phase one, this is what's going to work. If this works and we get positive signals, we're going to move to phase two. Here's phase two, here's phase three. And then you just need to make sure you understand how you're going to measure this new approach and getting everyone bought in. You don't want, your CEO, your CRO, your CFO to think if you're reallocating some marketing funds, you're going to see, what is the result you're going to see and what's the time to value on those things. The next phase, launch your value engine. Number one step with this is you got to figure out that strategic narrative. Without a really compelling strategic narrative, it's going to be really tough to get the engagement, really tough to build the trust. That is probably the number one thing, especially in tech consulting, that you need to have in order to not be looked at as a commodity and be looked at as a strategic partner. And then figure out what your pillar content is. And then from there, figure out based off your buyer, like what channels are they on? What do you want to test? After that phase, of course, all great marketing ends with measuring the success, compare KPIs and revenue correlation. What are the positive signals? Like where are you getting the most traction? And the last one's honestly, what needs to be cut? Like what did you try that failed? I think failure is a big piece of this. So knowing that the Center of Excellence workshop is the best way to start off on the right foot to really making a huge impact on your revenue attributed to marketing. One thing that we're offering on this call, because you showed up, is to just schedule a workshop with Forrest to do the Center of Excellence, to get that spun up and to really get started on making outgrow your competitive advantage. So with this, we'll help you uncover the areas of your marketing that are causing the most lost revenue. So there's always something, we always look at the spend on how your budget's allocated and look at what's working, what's not working, and help you understand like where you can reallocate some of those funds, where you can improve your marketing program in order to make up for lost revenue and really make marketing a powerful revenue generator. We'll also give you a specific plan to hit your goals. So we'll look at, okay, what were your goals this year? How can we make sure that you're going to hit them, if not exceed them? And then the last thing is, it's a 45-minute call. You get a trusted team of advisors, Scott, myself, Forrest is a team of about 20, and we've been working in this industry for 3 years now and have had a ton of experience in wins, losses. We also have a lot more data. I think that's probably the biggest thing that we could offer anybody is when you're working at a company on the brand side, you only can see your own data. You can't see the data from a lot of other companies. So no matter what, this is a 45-minute call. Scott and I are pretty chill. There's no sales pitch here. It's not anything like that, but we just, are really interested in helping companies, look at their marketing and make a change in order to make it human-centered.
Amazing. Zach, thank you. Zach's so chill, he has an REI calculator, which is his calculator that he brings into REI.
It's a little slip up. I live in Denver, so my mind's I'm just always thinking about REI.
All right, open it up to Q&A. Any questions? I got a question, Zach. There's a lot of folks that we talk to that want to take this approach. Their organizations are so entrenched in the old way of doing things. Where do you start to begin to kind of educate, bring other folks along, especially leadership?
Yeah, so that's always the big question is, all right, if we're going to make a change to how we've always done things, like what does that look like? And really, we always look at the data. That's like what it always stems from. I think that there's like some subjectivity to it when you can feel something's working better, but we like to start out with doing this in small increments. So you'd start out with one part of your business and silo that out and figure out, like, all right, if you're going to start a podcast, you have a business that has a lot of business units or a lot of areas. Like, let's say you're a ServiceNow partner and you do ITAM, you do CSM, you do like all the components of the ServiceNow platform. Start it in one area to one persona, and then measure how much that is impacting revenue versus a lead generation, your lead generation program or your current program. So all that to say, start it, do it small. I think this is where the center of excellence comes in, because with the center of excellence, you can get a lot more ELT buy-in. And then from there, yeah, you just look at the data and kind of figure out, like what's been the impact on this. And I think a lot of times when we've seen this happen, like I said about the subjective thing, you'll start to have, if you're launching a great podcast, you'll have your buyers coming in and being like, oh, I listened to this podcast, or you'll have other people at trade shows tell your CEO like, oh, I saw this piece of content, it was awesome. So you really start to build a lot of admiration. It's a great question.
Thank you. We got another question from Alex Rowe, and he wants to know, which do you think is better for an SME to be on, Twitter versus LinkedIn? Which channel is better, specifically in terms of demand gen for service tech companies?
Yeah, so right now, first thing I would say is it also depends on your buyer. I think I would start there. If your buyer is on Twitter a lot, then I would start on Twitter. I will say that LinkedIn probably has the biggest. LinkedIn's in this weird place where, like, for a long time it was a utilized platform, but not like, heavily utilized. There's not in their infancy, but I think it's about to blow up. And I think that there's still a huge opportunity for organic engagement on LinkedIn. I would say that there's a giant opportunity with the way the platform works, of if you can get one person, one of your ICPs, to like one person that's an ideal client to like your post, it's going to get shared to their network. And that's just like such good engagement. You can also be commenting on their posts and adding a lot of value. I think it's similar with Twitter, but I would probably say like skewing towards LinkedIn, but I don't know the buyer, and I would probably say the buyer is where you would start.
That's good. Yeah. And I'd say it's probably easier to grow your network on LinkedIn. I think it's just a much more natural kind of conversation. Like, some people know how to tweet, right? But like, everyone knows how to kind of have that conversation on LinkedIn, I'd say.
Yeah, totally agree.
I think we got time for one more question. And this one is, what tools do you think are essential ones for a company who wants to start implementing this strategy?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I would say is just honestly, LinkedIn is a great place to start with this. I would say you're going to need an email marketing platform, a CRM. I would also say like there's free versions of Dream Data that you can get that will help you understand, like, I'd say probably the biggest gap in like most expensive tools you'll need for this is figuring out like what companies are engaging with your content. So Dream Data has a free version that you can do that with. You can also use like LinkedIn ads and their engagement tracker. Like if you upload your target account list, LinkedIn will show you how much engagement they've had on your ads and on your organic posts. So you can start to learn that way too. So I would say a CRM, a marketing automation platform, and then LinkedIn would probably be my top three if I was going to do this in like the super lean way.
Yeah. And if you're working with an agency that has not set up a dashboard that's bringing all your information together, get rid of them, right? There's a lot of agencies out there that don't want you to have the visibility on how your ads are performing, how their efforts are performing. Make sure that whoever you're working with is giving you that visibility, because data, making sure that you're iterating, improving all along the way is absolutely essential. Awesome, Zach. Thank you.
Yeah. If there's any other questions, we'll put my email. I'll get an email from me, and I'm happy to riff on anything and chat about whatever.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your afternoon. And again, we are Forest. We are a high growth agency to help you all grow through human-centered marketing. And we would love to set up that COE workshop with you all and just help you meet your goals. So thank you so much, and have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.